Iran is often described in headlines as mysterious, unpredictable, or permanently locked in tension with the outside world. News coverage usually focuses on protests, nuclear talks, or regional conflicts, but these events make much more sense when you understand how power actually works inside the country. Unlike most political systems, Iran is built around a unique mix of religion, politics, and security institutions, with real authority concentrated far above the level of elected officials. At the center of this system stands the supreme leader, a figure who shapes Iran's direction in ways that presidents and parliaments cannot. To understand Iran's decisions at home and abroad, it is essential to look closely at who the supreme leader is, how he gained his position, and which forces help him maintain control. That brings us to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's current supreme leader. His rise from revolutionary cleric to the most powerful man in the country did not happen overnight, nor was it inevitable. It was shaped by revolution, war, internal power struggles, and the gradual strengthening of institutions, most notably the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, that now form the backbone of Iran's political system. Who is Iran's supreme leader and why it matters? At the center of Iran's political universe, and arguably the most powerful individual in the country, is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He's been in that role since 1989, making him one of the longest-serving political leaders in the Middle East in modern times. Born in 1939, Khamenei grew up in a religious family, trained in Shiite theology, and was deeply involved in the movement that eventually overthrew Iran's monarchy in the late 1970s. The title Supreme Leader might sound lofty or abstract, but in Iran, it means something very concrete. He outranks the president, controls the armed forces, shapes foreign policy, and oversees the judiciary and state media. The constitution gives him almost unchecked authority, especially over issues that touch on religion, national security, war and peace, and the nuclear program. In a system where presidents are publicly elected, the supreme leader remains the unelected pivot around which the entire state spins. If you picture someone who is more like a guardian king with religious legitimacy than a traditional president or prime minister, you're on the right track. Iran's system blends democratic elements with theocratic authority. The idea behind the system, called Velayat-e-Faqih, guardianship of the Islamic jurist, was put forward by the revolutionary leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who argued that in the absence of the hidden 12er Shi'i imam, supreme religious authority should rest in the hands of a senior cleric. Khamenei, though not originally considered among the highest clerical scholars, was chosen to succeed Khomeini after the revolution's founder died in 1989. From revolutionary to supreme leader, how Khamenei rose to power. Khamenei's rise wasn't simple or predetermined. Before he became supreme leader, he served as president of Iran from 1981 to 1989 during the brutal and formative Iran-Iraq War. He was a trusted ally of Khomeini and a loyal defender of the revolutionary state. When Khomeini died, the Clerical Assembly of Experts, a body of Islamic scholars elected by the public, chose Khamenei as his successor, even though he was not universally considered the most senior cleric. The choice reflected a desire for continuity, loyalty to the revolution, and political balance among Iran's powerful factions. What followed was a slow but sure expansion of his power. Over time, Khamenei centralized authority under the office of the supreme leader, often shrinking the influence of moderate clerics and sidelining political rivals who threatened the hardline revolutionary vision. Despite occasional cracks, moments when the regime faced widespread protests, economic hardship, or calls for reform, Khamenei has remained firmly in control for nearly 4 decades. What does the supreme leader actually control? When people talk about power in Iran, they usually talk about 2 things: the supreme leader's formal powers and his informal influence. Formally, the constitution gives him the authority to command the armed forces, including both the regular army and the Revolutionary Guard, appoint the heads of the judiciary, the major media outlets, and senior clerics, shape national security policies and foreign relations, and veto or influence major government decisions. But beyond the constitutional text lies something deeper: control over Iran's institutions and messaging. Khamenei effectively oversees the state's media apparatus and shapes how Iranians hear about both internal and international events. He also controls significant financial resources outside the regular budget, a parallel economy centered around charitable foundations and religious endowments that operate with little transparency and huge influence. Power like this means that even when presidents, who are elected every 4 years, have popular mandates, their authority can be limited if it clashes with the supreme leader's priorities. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Khamenei's enforcers. One part of the Iranian state that is particularly loyal to the supreme leader is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, often referred to simply as the IRGC. The IRGC was established soon after the 1979 Islamic Revolution as a parallel armed force to defend the new Islamic Republic against internal and external threats. It was originally conceived as a militia of revolutionary volunteers, but over time grew into one of the most powerful military, political, and economic institutions in Iran. Unlike the regular Iranian army, which is more traditional and focused on defending borders, the IRGC answers directly to the supreme leader. It has its own ground forces, navy, air arm, intelligence services, and a network of paramilitary units like the Basij, a volunteer militia involved in internal security and suppressing dissent. In addition, the IRGC runs elite units such as the Quds Force, which conducts foreign operations and oversees Iran's alliances with proxy groups across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Under Khamenei's leadership, the IRGC's role expanded beyond military duties to include economic ventures, construction companies, and even telecommunications, making it a major player in Iran's economy and political landscape. Estimates suggest the IRGC controls large swaths of business sectors and, by extension, political loyalty. Internationally, the IRGC's profile is controversial. Iran's supreme leader praises it as one of the world's foremost forces against terrorism, presenting it as a defender of Iran and its allies. But Western governments like the United States and Canada have designated the IRGC, including its Quds Force, as terrorist organizations due to their support for proxy militias and involvement in violent activities abroad. Why the supreme leader and IRGC are in the news today? In recent years, and especially in the past months, both Khamenei and the IRGC have been central to major tensions within Iran and across the region. Large protests have erupted in Iranian cities, driven by economic hardship, anger at political repression, and frustration with the government's response to public demands. These protests have sometimes turned violent, with state forces, including the Basij and IRGC units, cracking down harshly. Thousands of people have reportedly died in clashes with security forces, and the government has accused foreign powers of trying to inflame unrest. Iran's parliament and officials have repeatedly stressed that any threat to the supreme leader's authority would be treated as an attack on the nation itself, even warning of declarations of jihad if he were targeted. These statements underline both the symbolic importance of Khamenei within the political theology of the regime and the regime's determination to keep power centralized at the top. Regionally, the IRGC continues to shape Iran's foreign policy. It remains deeply involved in supporting allied militias and pursuing what it calls the axis of resistance against Israel and Western influence. Recent conflicts and strikes involving Israel and Iranian military sites highlight how deeply intertwined the IRGC and Tehran's strategy have become and how these confrontations reverberate across the Middle East. Succession and the future. What happens after Khamenei? At 86 years old, Khamenei's age and health naturally raise questions about what comes next. Officially, the Constitution says the Assembly of Experts, the same clerical body that chose him, will pick his successor. But in practice, succession is a high-stakes game involving political factions, powerful institutions like the IRGC, and ideological considerations. Some analysts believe that Khamenei's close allies, including family members and key clerics, are positioning themselves for influential roles in a post-Khamenei era. The IRGC's role in any succession period could be decisive because they control crucial levers of power, from security forces to economic assets. If the Supreme Leader's office ever became vacant unexpectedly, the IRGC would likely act quickly to stabilize the situation and ensure continuity within the regime. Why this matters, and why people pay attention. Understanding Iran's Supreme Leader and the IRGC is essential because their decisions impact not just Iran, but the entire Middle East. From nuclear tensions and proxy wars to global energy markets and diplomatic alliances. Inside Iran, the interplay between religious authority, political power, and security forces shapes everyday life, public freedoms, and economic realities. Internationally, how Iran's leaders interact with the United States, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and others can shift global politics overnight. In the end, Iran's political system is less about formal democracy and more about controlled power, ideology, and survival. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's long rule shows how revolutionary ideals can harden into permanent authority, supported by institutions like the IRGC that blur the line between military, politics, and economics. As Iran faces internal pressure from its own population and external pressure from regional and global rivals, the Supreme Leader remains the central figure holding the system together. What happens next, especially after Khamenei, will not only shape Iran's future, but could redefine power dynamics across the Middle East. Understanding this structure helps explain why Iran acts the way it does, and why changes in its leadership matter far beyond its borders. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like this video and subscribe our channel.